And again, if you read the if you read the Gospels through this lens, you're gonna give yourself some leeway. All of us, okay, every church leader I know is pretty hyper responsible. Like I remember elders saying to me, we need to be able to stand before Jesus and have a clear conscience that we were responsible with the entrusted flock. Think about that. That's a heavy weight to bear. That at the end of the day, these guys, these disciples are with the master, and yet at the end, they're still screwing up. It's absolutely messy.
Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to the Intentional Churches podcast. My name is Erin, and I'm hanging out here with our good friends Doug and Bart. The Intentional Churches, I mean, what like noble title should I give you guys? Founders, most important...
Jester.
Yes.
MVPs, the IC MVPs. I don't know.
No. I like Jester.
Okay. All right. That's good. Yeah, it's good to be with everybody. It's been a minute for me, you know.
Yeah, Erin, where have you been?
Yeah, I've been out here, Doug, just trying to be a church leader, you know.
Come on, tell them what you got cooking at Canaan Ridge these days.
Well, you know, for all of our my church leader friends that are listening, let me just give you the quick rundown. You know, lead pastor sabbatical, generosity campaign, building construction. Prepping for my own sabbatical, just to name a few things. Why I've been a little busy.
Any spiritual warfare?
Of course. Yeah. There's a nice little dose of that in there as well. So
yeah. Well,
you
survived.
I'm surviving. I am here. Yeah. I am on the podcast, and I'm ready to jump in because you guys did a thing and you wrote a book, another one, not even the first one, another one.
Yeah, this one was little though, you know. It was a tiny little book.
Just a tiny
very
little
important, very important. That's why we're doing this. Yeah.
Called Radical Alignment, which honestly is like what we've been talking about on this podcast for many, many, many seasons.
That's right. Yes.
And so you decided to write a book about it. We've talked about that a little bit, but thought we would just like try to dialogue about some of the important stuff that's in the book, hoping people obviously will read the book. But today, like, maybe thought it would be good to just get a little premise and background on the book and then like kind of get into the book itself and kind of just go after some of the concepts you guys talk about, particularly today, some of the challenges of alignment and some of where this came from. So maybe give us a little like premise, a little background for why this book, Radical Alignment, and why now. And then we'll kind of jump into the conversation further.
Sure thing. Doug, you want me to go?
Yeah, man. Have at it. By the way, everybody, this is the little known secret. So if you're a podcast listener or viewer, Bart writes the books. I don't really write the books, Erin. Did you know that? It's got concepts in it. We talked about it on the first episode of the season where Bart goes to the library and he tries to write so many words a day.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little, this is generationally telling. But there was this, it's not. There's new versions of the show Star Trek. You've seen that, right? Like,
Aaron, do you know what Star Trek is?
No, I know what Star Trek is, but I'm not a Trekkie. Is that what they're called? I'm not that person.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really one either, except when I have to become Spock and I do a Vulcan mind meld with Doug. Like, there's this, you'll see, like, you put your hands on his head and you download all the ideas.
Wow.
Anyway. My job is to the truth of it is we work a lot with churches. We both live in the same town. We don't get to collaborate very often. Often we'll find out if we're working with churches that we're having the same thoughts. Like I felt like IC's been a journey of like God sort of revealing what we need to know in the next season. And that's kind of the story of the book. We've been working since 2013 with churches, and we put out the original Red Book, which just a plug for the original podcast season was actually us talking like this about that original Red Book. And I found out yesterday that there's a lot of leaders that still go back and use that kind of explanation of what that was about to kind of explain, you know, what IC is about and what we've been up to. Well, that's kind of what the this book, we've kind of nicknamed them the Red Book, and this is the White Book because it's got a white cover on it.
Very,
Radical
very
alignment.
sophisticated. Very
Yeah,
Wow.
we try
How'd
to
you come up with that? That's crazy.
we try to keep it. We're very creative, keep it
Yeah.
simple around here. And so again, we're working with churches having these ideas. And to be honest, our network of churches is like creating ideas too now. We've worked with about 1,000 churches. That comes into the story. So God's revealing things. And one of the things he's revealing is kind of the foundations of what actually our work has always been about. And that's the personal side and the personal ownership of the mission, or the Great Commission is really the foundation of everything. And so as we're realizing that both personally and I remember at our first or second conference, Doug, like we had a session where one of our leaders got up and talked about the application of this tool. We have the Great Commission engine personally, remember? And we're like, our minds are being blown because they're learning how personal this is. And then we're learning and we're taking that to other churches and learning more. So the time came where we felt like we needed to sort of go backward in time and ourselves do a lot of soul searching about this personal foundation of the Great Commission as the foundation of what we're about, and sort of lay that down in, a book form. I'll say one thing about a book. I'm actually okay. I went to school, and believe it or not, I'm from Kentucky, but I did go to school, and my subjects were math and science, so I'm really not a writer at all. I just can organize the ideas and synthesize them, and so then I get them down, and people help put it into final form. So that's what we did. I just got the ideas together from our team, from Doug, and we laid this foundation that is this book, Radical Alignment, which we've nicknamed the White Book. So yeah, that's the background of it. And it's very important, we're finding, to talking about the why. If the Red Book was how specifically for a leadership team to embrace alignment to the Great Commission, this book is laying the foundation, we believe, for the why behind all of it. So that's my simple explanation, although it took a while there. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, Erin, I would just add that I think anybody who's listening and is a church leader and is new to IC, this book is the book to start with.
Mm.
As Bart has coined, the Red Book is very technical. And this book is way more, it's like Bart described it as a prequel, and really is laying both a very scriptural foundation for what the church is really called to be and do. And then I think the other thing, the way that IC has been built, Intentional Church has been built, is it is a gigantic learning community of church leaders at the ground. Like yesterday, I was having a conversation with one of them, and I'm listening to him, and like they're innovating left and right. And he said, we don't even know that we're innovating. It's like you listen and you hear it and you've never heard it before, and you validate that it's an innovation. And then you say, hey, we need to get that out to everybody. So I would say, think of this Radical Alignment book like this is harnessed learnings across 30 plus denominations and 1,000 plus church teams, from plants to churches that grown super fast to big churches, small churches, rural, urban, the mix. And so I just think this is for anybody who's going to pick up this book, this is a really helpful read for your team to kind of get a basic reset of church.
Yeah. And it seems like this book was a little hard fought in terms of there has been some challenges along the way, particularly, in chapter 2, you start to kind of talk through many of those challenges. I'm wondering if it might be helpful to start to dive into some of those. You had this vision for IC. You talk about how you wanted to have 1,000 churches bought in with you in no time, right? We'll give it 5 years, but maybe it'll happen in 3. And here you are. How many years later?
13, right? 15, something like that.
I don't know. We started the work really in like
This
2010
this next month will be 13 years. Yeah.
of
Wow.
IC. But we started the work before that in 2010. No, it's like a long time. Yeah, Bart. It's gonna be 3 years, right? 1,000 churches
Yeah,
in 3 years? That was you, wasn't
yeah.
it?
Oh, yeah, yeah. We
Hey, big
had
vision. We love that.
well, okay. If we could get lots of churches collaborating together, we could see on the same type frameworks and platform, then we could see some amazing developments when it came to reaching people, reaching the lost, and discipling people. And we thought, well, what's a good number that would take? I think we put the number 5,000 on the board, and we thought, well, that'll take us 3 to 5 years to like get to that point. So we what we didn't realize is it's one church embracing this at a time. And so that's
Mhm.
what we've done. And now there is a movement of, 1,000 plus churches that have been trained in this, at least in various levels of application. So yeah, it was a big vision, but God continues, I think, just to give us what it's going to take little by little. So anyway, yeah, the challenges, it's been challenging for sure. And some of the challenges that we started observing 13 years ago, 15 years ago, even are the same, and some are a little bit different. And they're really barriers to becoming a church that is concerned and well informed about the lost, proactively keeping them. We created this definition in the book, top of mind. This knowledge and way of operating is so fundamental and far reaching and thorough that it becomes a key source of agreement and alliance in a church. That's the definition of an intentional churches or of an intentional church. But there's massive headwinds to seeing that happen. And so we thought, well, we're just going to talk about those at first in the book, even though they're not the point, and we have all felt them, and start there in terms of our collaboration.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah, I was
think one
gonna
of my
say.
big questions, I think for probably both you guys, one of those things that has proven to be harder or more difficult than we thought is collaboration actually between churches.
Mhm.
Like that is so bizarre to me. Like, I don't know. Do you guys have a take? Like, Aaron, you got King Ridge tries to collaborate with others. Like, why is this hard for us to work
It
together on stuff?
it's so interesting because it's like, I mean, you meet the occasional church leader that doesn't wanna collaborate with others, but by and large, you meet church leaders and they're like, "We want to collaborate with others. We're not in this for it to be a competition." And so it feels like church leaders are saying the same things. We want this. We want to collaborate. And we we don't know how. I think some of it is speed, you know. It just takes longer to collaborate with other churches, and I think uh oh man, we're not even that far into this episode and I already feel spicy, so I don't know if that's helpful. But like every church, mine included, thinks that they have a niche vision, you know?
Yes.
And that
Amen.
doesn't align with someone else's vision. Well,
Yep.
they don't understand our vision, so it makes it hard to collaborate. And I
That's
think
right.
we major in minors sometimes, and so then we just feel like, it's just easier not to collaborate. I don't know. That's my hot take.
Bart,
I think, yeah, I think the same challenge, going back to that like definition, unifying the church around this idea of reaching the lost, we think is a great solution. We're going to talk more about it. You can't collaborate like with other churches, but you even within your own church,
Yeah.
because the definitions of things and your understanding of what the church is about and the mission of the church and the purpose of the church is all over the map. And so I think when we started, we thought, this is reflection. Oh, if we just create common language, and that's a part of what our toolboxes do, is they create common language. Like, oh, if we just create common language, then we can all start collaborating together. And then a church within a team, one church. But wow, it's way deeper than that in terms of your understanding of really those core things, the theology, missiology, and ecclesiology, those big words in church, understanding of God, the purpose of the church in the world, like those are all over the map in a lot of our churches. So fighting for that is probably one of the biggest, I'll use the word headwind again, to collaboration, I think.
yeah.
Mhm.
Again, Aaron, spiciness. I'm going to say this. there is also in all of us a little bit of hubris, and there is a very much a spirit sometimes, the kind of on the heels of what you were saying of not invented here
Mhm.
kind of mentality that seeps into
Mhm.
us. And I gotta be honest, I was guilty of it, and how it
Mhm.
plays itself out if your church gets to of size and really gets budget, you start thinking not good thoughts, like, we could create our own missions organization, our own church planning organization, or, and all of a
Yep.
sudden, you're just down this slippery slope of I don't know. Do you guys have thoughts about that? Am I, like, out of bounds here?
I
Uh,
think what you're talking about goes with something you talk about in chapter 2 around like impulsive leadership tendencies. You talk about that as being one of the greatest challenges that you have encountered in IC is that impulsive leader decisions are like way more prevalent than you thought. So maybe that's connected to what you're saying. Like we we get comfortable or we get this great idea and so we run with it, not asking the right questions and not considering we don't begin with the end in mind, which I think is so important, you know?
Mm.
well, to that end, I think, and along these same lines, yeah, there's really two sides to this. We have to come up with the idea, or we've got to go to somebody else for the idea. Like those are kind of in the same family. Like, in other words, it's got to be ours 100%, or we have to go somewhere else to find it versus using good process and frameworks to search the heart of God for our ministry. Does that make sense? Like we have to create something unique, or we have to go find something unique from somebody else versus let's just let God define what the application of these principles is going to mean for our church. And
Mm.
that's kind of where we live, is that in between. And so, yes, Doug, I think that's not too cynical to say the not invented here is out there a lot. And then I've seen the other where we think we got to go somewhere else to find the unique thing, the latest trend, the latest idea. We've talked a lot about this over the years, and I think the ultimate end of that is actually the erosion of the confidence that we can find the answers together as a team, that we always have to go somewhere else. And so then we get stuck, or we've invented something that's so unique it only works for us and then it stops working. Like, what are we going to do? Like, we really have to have an in-between process to search and iterate and find the heart of God over time. And the answers can come from a team, because really what we're talking about is biblical simple fundamentals that a team uses to find the solution in the next season, right? And iterate. So yeah, I kind of believe the impulsiveness leads to both sides of what we just talked about.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think one just around this idea of collaboration, if I circle all the way back up to kind of this parent idea, if you think about the way God works in the world for an unbeliever to come to know Jesus, it is incredibly dynamic. And I think so many times as church leaders, we don't understand that that's in play. Like I was having a conversation just this week with smaller church, rural community, awesome process. They gotten a hold of some of our tools and they had gone through this deal where they were kind of thinking through the lens of a one for the first time with their team. And they all kind of arrived at the same point when they started thinking about the places where they go, the sports teams, their kids, families in school, the grocery store, whatever, wherever they go, that people don't know Jesus yet. They came to this very beautiful kind of collective consensus. And then they read in this new book about a church in the same community and very innocently asked, basically, do we need to redo it? And I'm like, no, because you went through it. It's actually awesome that your people had to wrestle with the question, your leadership team wrestled with the question, who are the people who don't know Jesus in our community that I know personally? And again, if you see the work of God in the world as dynamic, Bart, I loved when you really pointed us back to 1 Corinthians 3:6, and Christians in all kinds of churches could be planting and watering in the life of a one if people were owning the Great Commission personally. And God gives the increase. There is no competition,
Eh,
you know?
Can I
And
talk about this really?
we need to see it as collaboration with the other churches in our community, the other Christians in our community, because God is a dynamic God. Yes. Sorry.
I'm sorry I cut you off. I got so excited about it. It's like I'm reading John 4. I'm looking it up right now. I'm not going to be able to find it. Where um he's talking about, and maybe actually John 3. That's why I can't find it. Where he's talking about Jesus says this. He talks about the harvest, and he literally says the words. I was reading the NLT, which might actually have it uniquely. He says literally, some are going to plant and some are going to harvest, and both are going to have the joy of their effort. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He says that in John. He's the one that said it. I never thought this is like again, it's probably like people with seminary degrees are going to look down on this fact. But like, that was actually, they're referencing back to what Jesus said when they said, he planted, I watered, God gave. He's going all the way back to the framework Jesus laid out. Just read it I believe it's there in the story of with the Samaritan woman. Perhaps it's right in that same area where Jesus says that some are going to plant, some are going to harvest, but it's like and I thought of you, Doug, when you use that word dynamic. He's laying the framework that spiritual growth, finding and following Jesus, because he had said, come and follow, come and see. He's teaching his disciples this reality. We're going to plant. It's going to grow, I'm sure, is the implied idea. And then some are going to harvest. And he's basically teaching them our job is just to go and plant and occasionally, yes, harvest. But that's our work. And so he's going from town to town. You got to go read it, man. It's like right there. And I never thought about that being what was referenced later in the New Testament. Just unbelievable to me.
It's great. Is there more you want to say, Doug or Bart, around just this kind of first challenge that you talk about in this chapter around it being harder than you thought?
I
Uh,
I know everybody talks about this, but I'd like for us to unpack a little bit the how much Bart referenced, how much of your staff, your board, and your congregation's view of theology, ecclesiology, missiology is through the lens of Christian consumerism, is through
mhm,
consumerism. And I've had multiple conversations with Christians over the last few weeks where I've just been blown away, where the entire worldview is my thing, my happiness, my. It's very, if you really start unpacking it, it is. And it's in us as church leaders too. Like, if you're, I don't know. Do you guys have thoughts around this? Because everybody talks about Christian consumerism. But really, what we're saying is this is a really it is an innate, like, part of at least Western Christendom that is fighting against you at every turn.
mhm, mhm,
Yeah, I talk a little bit about, uh, I kind of take it to the extreme. I was reading it again, like this idea of spiritual narcissism. Like I don't know when it turned, because I don't think it was always that way, but just so many of us in our churches, um, you know, you've heard the phrase, what we want them with, we want them to. So then we just want that. And I think at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of good heart behind, um, there's a lot of good heart behind wanting Christian community and wanting good teaching and wanting to be developed, right? But the irony of that turning me inward to myself and my Christian circle and friends is, it's not right, right? And the great antidote, I say, like kryptonite with Superman, is a focus on the one. That's what we say in that that chapter, and it's worth reading. And I think a lot of our leaders are weighed down by the gravitational force that is the inward focus of many of the 99. And so I hate to say it, we're going to talk about it again and again. The one solution, the kryptonite, is just going back to the mission of Jesus and the Great Commission and focusing on the real purpose and mission of your life, not just your church. The organization was the next one to be reached, the Great Commission being given to people, not an organization. And so I don't know if that complementary thought helps, but it's in that chapter we unpack it a little bit, which leads to another headwind that's directly connected to this, and that is the institutionalizing of the Great Commission then, right? So think about it. It's a real natural sequence. We talk about it. I don't see it as my responsibility. And as soon as you hear my church, my seat, my parking spot, my Sunday school class,
My mom's church. I heard that recently.
you did?
You're not going to take my mom's church from her.
Wow. So it's like, I can understand it though. Like I have a real heart for that. And we've, in other words, I love the church. I understand you caring desperately about my church, as long as that means my community there for other people, right? That's not often. So think about what it means. So then it's connected to the church's job, the institution's job. And Doug, you got to talk about this. Erin, you can talk about your experience in this. Becomes the who carries out, like this non-human entity, is there to accomplish the Great Commission in a way, right? Like this thing, not necessarily me. And so, and the way we institutionalize it, I'll just say this so you guys can talk about it, is often programmatic. Programs are going to win people. And we think the staff are there many times, that's kind of their job to get that done. And there's other things too. Anyway, I'll stop there. It's kind of like it all kind of sequences and goes together in that chapter on purpose. So they're linked in my mind.
Yeah. Go. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
one
I
of
was
the
going to
things
just ask you, Erin. I mean,
Yeah.
you're in it every week and every day. You preach some. Like, what are your thoughts do you have around this
Yeah.
gravitational force?
Well, I think one of the important things to acknowledge is like not only are we beginning to become aware of the way the pendulum has swung towards Christian consumerism, and we're all talking about it, right? More and more churches are realizing this, but like to assess, you talked about staff, like almost all of the staff members that we have grew up in this kind of environment. So it's the only water they know how to swim in. They grew up in some sort of church that was consumeristic in nature, even if that's not what they would espouse to be, that's what was happening. And so we replicate who we are. And so I think it's like the best intentioned, good-hearted people. This was the culture, the environment, the way that they were modeled and taught from a young age. Then fast forward, you come to a place, you're trying to think differently, but none of the loudest voices are saying, help me go make disciples who make disciples. The loudest voices are saying, you guys aren't blah, 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 blah. Or why isn't the church blah, 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 blah. Or what is the staff doing for fill in the blank? My grandma, my son, my young adult. Like, so the pull comes from the criticism we receive. And we're not receiving criticism for being too consumeristic from people. We're receiving criticism for not meeting their consumeristic desires.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, that is where I think about, I was going to say young staff, but any staff, we're humans. And when criticism comes our way, if we don't know how to take criticism, we bend to criticism, right? Even if we don't want to, or
Yeah.
criticism sticks with us. And so I would say, just to the church leaders that are listening, when you take criticism all the time, which we do as church leaders, it's exhausting. And when criticism is often pointed in a particular direction, which is the needs of consumers, that wears on you. And when you
Mm.
have young staff who don't know the difference and all they've ever been handed and grew up in was a consumeristic environment, they replicate who they are, even completely not maliciously. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's kind of how I've been thinking about some of that lately.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's spot on, and I think you've hit a nerve with the criticism thing, because I think every church leader listening, that is part of
Yeah.
the experience of leading in a church. It's part of the calling that you have to put up with, in essence, of the criticism. But I try to get my brain around how this has we reinforce accidentally, because we're so, like, Bart was starting to go down this road of our job is to steward the institution. Like, and we've used this phrase for so long now, institutional thinking, how subconsciously wired it is in all of us as church leaders. And that I just wondered if you guys I was trying to think of concrete examples, because I've been told, you know, there's a lot of people who are super concrete and they need examples of, like, decisions you would make in church leadership that reinforce institutional thinking, which then inadvertently reinforces Christian consumerism. Can you guys think of specific examples maybe you've made in church leadership, like, that have led accidentally to reinforcement of it's the institution's job to own the Great Commission, instead of the individual believers in the church?
I could offer a quick one that would probably apply in multiple directions. I think one of the quickest ones that I've been tempted to make, and I think many church leaders would resonate with, is when we see a need in the church that's not being met, our instinct is we need to hire a staff member. So there's a ministry that's not happening, just to get even more concrete, let's say it's young adults. Oh, we have a real need. Young adults are speaking up. They feel like we're not offering something for them. So you know what would fix that? Let's hire a staff member. And that way the church, quote unquote, can fix this problem. Now, we might need a staff member, but that should not be where we begin, because that reinforces it's the institution's responsibility to handle this felt need in the community, rather than gathering the people who are saying, this is a need we feel, and asking those people, how do you want to contribute to meeting this need? That
Yeah,
puts ownership back on individuals in the church to help be a part of the
yeah.
solution and to bring a contribution and not just consume what the church has to offer them. So that's one concrete way I think, like, if our first gut reaction is we need a staff member, that's institutional thinking, in a
Mhm.
nutshell.
And for me to a lot of teams, that is often the very first thing we run to out
Right,
there. Bart,
right.
did you have any thoughts? Like, any concrete examples or that
Oh,
you've
I just
seen out there with teams?
yeah, I want to repent. Like I'm like the I think my whole career, the first 2/3 of it were trying to build programs, and I was in my career had the privilege of just running around the circle on all the things, small group ministry, singles ministry, on and on and on. And I know how I thought that that was the purpose of the church, was to offer the program, right? So it wasn't until Central Christian, where I worked, where I got to build this awesome operational team, where I began to taste what we're talking about, which was that the people doing those jobs and were the ministry, not not the operations. So because we use hundreds of volunteers, it was like they were the ministry. So I began to see that. I think the next thing I began to see was the opportunity for ones and for that group to be on mission in a different way, not just in their service and using their gifts, but in the ministry among the group and the reaching of those, because people would volunteer to serve there, uh, who didn't necessarily know the Lord. It was wonderful ministry going on. It's where my eyes began to light up. Like, that is the Great Commission in action right there, right? I don't think I had an understanding of it, but it wasn't what we all the job descriptions of what we did as an operating team, it was what was going on by all the volunteers and the staff members on the team
Yeah.
is where the ministry was happening. So I think that's where the lights came on for me to begin to convert to this kind of different way of thinking, if you would. I don't know if that's helpful, but that
Yeah.
was it for me, man.
Well, again, you talk about repenting, and Aaron, I'm so sorry because you got to inherit some of the decisions I made. But like our team, man, we went after this strategy years ago, which if you're a smaller church, I know it just seems so ridiculous, kind of. We brought in big name weekend kind of celebrities and interviewed them.
Yep.
Yeah, I heard the holy grail of all the autographed pictures got donated to Goodwill or something. And just real fast, we were the first church to sign on Tim Tebow because of a relationship we had at the height of his career. If you're younger, you probably don't even know who Tim Tebow is anymore. But let's just say we announced the weekend after he threw an overtime touchdown pass against my beloved Steelers in the wild card playoff game in Denver. Not that I remember it that clearly, but yes, we announced that Tim Tebow was coming, and we just took such an institutional mindset to this what could have been a beautiful opportunity for people to bring their ones,
Mm-hmm.
and we made it into basically an operational prep. There was no vision cast of, hey, your ones you've been invested in. This is to bring him. We literally heard people say, I'm not going to come that weekend because I know it's going to be overcrowded. I'm like, no, what are we doing here? And so anyway, there's a lot of stuff like that. Again, if you're a small church, you're probably thinking, what a waste of money. You guys are dumb. But um, yeah, I don't know. That's institutional thinking. I think if you're as a church leader listening, really doing a self-diagnosis around the question of what does it mean to have institutional thinking in our context? And how have I seen us make decisions that are actually reinforcing, not mobilizing and activating people, but creating consumerism would be a good exercise to have with your team, I think. It is
Yeah.
so rampant in us. Yeah.
Yeah, one of
Yeah.
the other things you guys talk about, we've talked about, several of the challenges that you have faced, but one of them that you talk about that I think is connected to some of this inventory that you're talking about, Doug, is like the relationship between evangelism and discipleship, and how people
Yeah, I was
have,
hoping we would hit that. I think
like
it's a big one. Yeah.
separated those things, or those things are not connected to one another. Bart, is there anything you want to say about that?
Well, just that I think that it's a great bridge as we talk about the challenges in this first episode. We get those out of the way. We start talking about the solution. I think it's a great bridge to where all this sums up is like, and then I'll toss it to Doug for a few thoughts. But the Great Commission, my good friend Bobby Harrington is the one that said we need to talk about disciple making because discipleship is separated from evangelism, and really it's all one thing. And we say this in the book, you can't teach them to obey unless they've said yes to the Lord, right? And they've heard the word and they've heard the gospel. Specifically uses the word preach the gospel and baptize them and teach them to obey. And it's like, it's all one big picture, right? And for whatever reason, and Doug, maybe you can give some thoughts to this, we've sort of pulled these topics apart. And I was thinking of examples. I'll just give one example of one that had pulled them apart and was only going to focus on disciple making. And I don't think the church is there anymore. And I've never really thought about why, but for some reason in doing so, they had left the evangelism side of disciple making, the Great Commission, behind. And I don't know what's up right now. I kind of would like to find out, but that's the danger a little bit. So Doug, maybe you can, what are your thoughts on it?
Again, this is a hard truth, and I kind of not sorry that I'm going to say this is a church who has a viewpoint or church leaders have a viewpoint that we're going to deeply disciple somebody without evangelism in the equation is actually not scriptural at all.
Mhm.
That is not the way Jesus did it.
Mhm.
And we talk all the time now. Challenge your team to go read through the New Testament, but especially the Gospels again, with the Great Commission as the banner of, Jesus gave the words at the end of his life, but he exemplified throughout the Gospels the way in which it was to be done. There was no deep Bible study. Somebody may challenge me on that. There was no and these guys were like blue collar. Did they know
Yeah.
the Torah? I don't know. But Jesus exemplified participation. We're going to go, we're going to help people who need help, and we're going to share the good news as we go. And that is the model. And that is a hard thing for a lot of church leaders to get their head around. We've created something that's more a scholastic, knowledge based gospel when Jesus exemplifies a very active participatory. And again, if you read if you read the Gospels through this lens, you're gonna give yourself some leeway. All of us, okay, every church leader I know is pretty hyper responsible. Like I remember elders saying to me, we need to be able to stand before Jesus and have a clear conscience that we were responsible with the entrusted flock. Think about that. That's a heavy weight to bear. That at the end of the day, these guys, these disciples are with the master, and yet at the end, they're still screwing up. It's
Mhm.
absolutely messy. Like, it's okay. I think if you read it through this lens, your church should be messy. Like, people doing stuff they shouldn't be doing, because that's what we see in scripture. I don't know. Is that too much, guys? Am I like going overboard there?
I know that's strong. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend who says, to kind of you said it, Doug, like we don't just need deep Bible study, which by the way, no one is saying that we shouldn't study God's word. No one is saying that.
Correct.
We should. We should study God's word. And uh I have a friend that says you are only as deep as your last disciple that you made.
Oof.
And so that should cause all of us to do a little inventory. That, in modern Christian thought, to just continue with your spiciness, Doug, we love to be deep. And could it be that we're measuring depth with the wrong metrics and that depth is
Yeah.
actually about
Yep.
the disciples we've made who have made disciples who have made disciples? Yeah.
And of all the challenges we talk about in chapter 2, I think this is right up there. Like, we gotta get crystal clear
Yep.
that you're as a church leader, when you call people to own the Great Commission personally, you're calling them to the greatest adventure that God intended on this earth. You're not
Yep.
calling them to a burden that's heavy.
Yeah.
Just go look at any brand new believer.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had a conversation with a brand new believer. They're all so on fire, so pumped up. They
Yeah.
they couldn't contain it.
Right.
And, you know, they're not
Yeah.
gonna not tell people about Jesus.
Right.
Like, they
Right.
don't think about all these things. And, if you've
And
been
guess what?
around
They might say something wrong. And guess what? We're going to
totally.
be okay.
This guy I know a little bit. He's gonna say wrong crap. Can I
Yeah.
say crap? I don't even know. Are we allowed to say crap on our podcast, Bart?
Well, you just did.
I think you just did.
Okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, okay.
Well, it
I'm
it
done.
seems like
I'll be quiet.
yeah, we're running
Can't
out
wait
of
to
time,
talk more about this.
gentlemen.
I can't either because I think we talked about it last episode, but it's bringing what's the word, fulfillment is probably not, but it's bringing life to every aspect of life
Mm.
when you layer that on the mission. Like, that's why you are studying. That's why
Yeah.
you are raising your kids. It's why you have a gift and job that God has given you, and on and on and on it goes. It's just so life-giving to fulfill those things, not just like a purpose and a calling is like over here on the side. It's like embedded into everything. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to talk about that more too.
I recently was with this longtime Christian church leader, and she was having this transformational epiphany And now this family is very active evangelistically. Like they pull their toys out in the front yard. They've got a
Yeah.
fridge. Like they become the neighborhood hang. And she said the words like, I have been doing evangelism in my life as a Christian as a sacrifice, but God called me to not bring justice, but mercy. And
Mm.
here's this longtime believer's heart, God shaping through evangelism to a new depth and level that she would never be able to be on if she weren't reading her God's word through that lens of being active in the mission. She's like, oh, I need to go another level where I'm showing mercy to my neighbors. I'm not just getting a check mark for sacrificing. Anyway,
Yeah.
just for anybody out there listening, we have kicked off just in the last couple of months here and going to be around for a while, this thing called the Alignment Workshop. We have both live versions that are hosted by kind of regional IC churches. There's more and more of those out there. And then there's also an online version where you would always do this in collaboration. We do them in cohorts with churches. Real low cost, low time commitment, but it would help you process the concepts in this book. And so I would encourage anybody, check out the Alignment Workshop live or online, and it'll help you with this concepts that we've talked about in the prequel here, Radical Alignment, the surprising journey to becoming an intentional church.
Right on.